Cleopatra is arguably one of Shakespeare's greatest dramatic creations. Love her or loathe her, you cannot fail to remember her in all her infinite variety. Depending on who you listen to in Shakespeare's play, Antony and Cleopatra, you could walk away believing that the Queen of Egypt had been either a sacred figure, like the ancient Egyptian goddess Isis, or something profoundly unflattering, like a foul Egyptian witch. For some characters, Cleopatra is beyond compare. She is, alas, unparalleled. While for others, she is a plain gypsy, triple-turned whore and wrangling queen. While Cleopatra inspires some characters to reach for the most poetical of phrases to describe her, she also attracts gutter press headlines, such as "She made great Caesar lay his sword to bed, he ploughed her, and she cropped." Cleopatra is at times described in iconic terms. She is an Eastern star, an Egyptian dish, a serpent of old Nile. But she's also spoken of in cheap, tawdry terms as a strumpet, a witch, and a boggler.
Sir, I will eat no meat. I will not drink, sir. If idle talk will once be necessary, I'll not sleep neither. This mortal house I'll ruin. Do Caesar what he can. Know, sir, that I will not wait pinioned at your master's court, nor once be chastised by the sober eye of dull Octavia. Shall they hoist me up and show me to the shouting varletry of censoring Rome? Rather a ditch in Egypt be gentle grave unto me! Rather on Nilus mud lay me stark naked, and let the waterflies blow me into abhorring. Rather make my country's high pyramids my gibbet, and hang me up in chains.
With a whopping 678 lines, Cleopatra is the second largest female role in the Shakespeare canon, just after Rosalind with 685 lines in As You Like It. But it's not just Cleopatra's words and actions that help to build an impression of her character. She's often the topic of conversation, even when she's not on stage. Cleopatra is a focus of hot gossip for the Romans, and everyone has an opinion about this woman, for good, for bad, and for ugly. While Shakespeare's play is called Antony and Cleopatra, Cleopatra dominates, just as she has long dominated the popular imagination. There are far more historical books, films and documentaries made today about Cleopatra than Mark Antony, and most people will be able to instantly conjure popularised images of the Egyptian queen, so much so that she's one of the most popular and recognisable characters for fancy dress parties. Shakespeare clearly knew what he was doing when he killed off Antony in the fourth act of his play and gave Cleopatra total reign over the final fifth act. Shakespeare never lets his audience settle on a single viewpoint of the Egyptian queen, and indeed Cleopatra would have been perceived very differently by a range of people in her own lifetime. In Shakespeare's play, the cold, calculating Romans tend to fear and badmouth what they see as Cleopatra's Eastern sensuality, desire, and sexual appetite. But they're also in awe of this enchantress who captured the hearts of some of Rome's most powerful men. This is best summed up by the hardened Roman soldier Enobarbus, who says that
age cannot wither her, nor custom stale her infinite variety. Other women cloy the appetites they feed, but she makes hungry where most she satisfies. For vilest things become themselves in her, that holy priest bless her when she is riggish.
sadly there are no ancient biographies of the historical Cleopatra. We know frustratingly little about her, and the things we do know about her are often closely tied to the lives of the men with whom she shared her life. We know, for instance, that she became Queen of Egypt when she was approximately 18 and ruled for around 20 years. Throughout her reign, she shared power with both of her younger brothers, first Ptolemy XIII and then Ptolemy XIV, and their deaths after those she became co-ruler with her son Ptolemy Caesarion. Cleopatra was not actually Egyptian, but Macedonian, And unlike her native Greek-speaking ancestors, who never learned the Egyptian tongue, Cleopatra learned to speak the language of her subjects. This was a sign both of her intelligence and her political savvy, as it's always a good idea for rulers to know firsthand what their subjects are whispering. Julius Caesar was famously one of Cleopatra's lovers. The story goes that she was snuck into his birthday party wrapped in a rug and unfurled before his feet. Shakespeare's Antony alludes to this relationship when, in a fit of anger, he belittles Cleopatra by saying that she was just a morsel, cold upon dead Caesar's trencher when he discovered her. The cruelty of these words is emphasised when we recognise that historically Cleopatra was never a morsel, but a very significant figure in Julius Caesar's life. She was in Rome at Caesar's villa when the conspirators led by Brutus and Cassius assassinated their leader on the Ides of March, and her son Ptolemy Caesarion, as the name suggests, was fathered by Julius Caesar. For early historians, men, not women, were the focus of interest and importance. Shakespeare would have learned about Cleopatra via the life story of her lover Antony in Sir Thomas North's translation of Plutarch's lives of the noble Grecians and Romans. It was in this book that Shakespeare would have read about the life of Mark Antony, as well as the lives of Julius Caesar, Timon of Athens, and Coriolanus. In a book so focused upon the lives of men, Cleopatra's part in Antony's story clearly intrigued Shakespeare, prompting him to give her name equal billing in the title of his new play. So what would Shakespeare have discovered about Cleopatra from Plutarch? Plutarch describes Cleopatra as being very persuasive, with an irresistible charm. He blamed Cleopatra for Antony's downfall and saw this as a warning to other men about surrendering authority to a woman. Shakespeare is arguably more sympathetic in his presentation of the love between these figures of ancient history. In his writing, Plutarch captures a sense of Cleopatra's majesty and alludes to the theatricality and displays of wealth that help maintain this queen's public image. Plutarch famously describes a barge that Cleopatra sailed on in an eye-catching procession along the river Cydnus. These words and images found their way directly into Shakespeare's writing, producing one of the play's most historically accurate and most beautiful speeches.
The barge she sat in, like a burnished throne, burned on the water. The poop was beaten gold, purple the sails, and so perfumed that the winds were lovesick with them. The oars were silver, which to the tune of flutes kept stroke, and made the water which they beat to follow faster, as amorous of their strokes. For her own person it beggared all description. She did lie in her pavilion, cloth of gold of tissue, picturing that Venus, where we see the fancy, outwork nature.
For her own person, it beggared all description. Almost feels here that Shakespeare is aware that Cleopatra has become lost in her own mythology and mists of time. Rather than trying to reduce Cleopatra to words alone, he relies upon the pomp and pageantry of the scene to convey Cleopatra's essence. She is the air, the smells, the rhythm, the heat. She is for future generations a sensation as much as a personality. One of the things that makes Cleopatra historically iconic is the manner and mystery surrounding her death. As with other female icons such as Marilyn Monroe, people often think they know more about Cleopatra's death than about her actual life. Facts are that Cleopatra died on the 10th of August, 30 BC, just over a week after Antony had taken his own life. But how did she die? Asp or no asp? That is the question. Plutarch sowed the seeds of future speculation about the exact nature of Cleopatra's death when he wrote, "The truth of the matter no one knows." He informed his readers, among them William Shakespeare, that a man from the country carrying a basket appeared at Cleopatra's mausoleum, was allowed to enter after an inspection of the basket's contents. The basket was full of figs. The man handed over the basket, and the doors to Cleopatra's chamber were sealed closed. Over time, historians have had different opinions about what happened next, and how precisely Cleopatra was poisoned. Was an asp, a viper, or a cobra lurking inside the basket as per Cleopatra's orders? was a fatal poison contained within a hollow pin that Cleopatra wore in her hair. Historians make it clear that Cleopatra was not in a good way after Antony's death, tearing at her hair and skin with her nails, consequently suffering from an infectious fever. It would seem that the historical Cleopatra's death was not the majestic, calmly stage-managed and sacred scene that Shakespeare gives us.
Give me my robe. Put on my crown. I have immortal longings in me. Now no more the juice of Egypt's grape shall moist this lip. Here, could Iris quick? Methinks I hear Antony call. I see him rouse himself to praise my noble act. I hear him mock the luck of Caesar, which the gods give men to excuse their after-wrath. Husband, I come. Now to that name my courage prove my title. I am fire and air. My other elements I give to baser life.
Shakespeare creates a scene of a woman who identifies as a queen, a wife, and a goddess. Shakespeare added significantly to the mythology around Egypt's last queen. He developed his historical sources to create a woman who is at once powerful, jealous, humorous, stern, intelligent, vain, courageous, vulnerable, stubborn, fickle, loyal, down to earth, and otherworldly. She is all of these things, and Shakespeare revels in the contradictions.